I can think of 3 times in the past that Kawasaki made motorcycles exactly like what the public was thirsty for, starting with the 1984 GPZ 900R. Late 80s, early 90s, everybody had this crotch rocket leader bike, fast super sport bike craze, and Kawasaki gave the public exactly that. The fastest motorcycle of its time, with a speed reaching 155 miles per hour. And because of its speed and because of its agility, the GPZ 900R was named Ninja by Kawasaki. And of course, that was the first ever Ninja made. And because of its speed, it was portrayed in the original Top Gun movie as Tom Cruise's primary bike, sitting in the hangar next to those fighter jets. And following that bike, Kawasaki in 2015 made the next exciting move by putting superchargers in their motorcycles, introducing the H2R, which approached 300 horsepower power figure, which was baffling at the time. Yamaha came up with the R1M and Ducati came up with the V4 Superleggera. And although those bikes were unique in their own ways, none of them really shined like the H2R did in 2015. And the third bike was made in 2023, with Kawasaki eavesdropping on the public and listening for what everybody wants. And in this day and age, nobody really cares about a leader bike anymore. Nobody wants a heavy 500-pound, 1,000cc motorcycle that makes 280 horsepower. Everybody's craving something small, something light, yet fast and agile, with a comfortable ergo they can ride on the streets, but they could take it to the track too. And Kawasaki gave the public exactly what they asked for, and that was the ZX4RR, which is the bike that's in front of us, and we're gonna review it today. So let's do that. Let's go wheel to wheel and everything in between on this brand new 2024 ZX4RR, and essentially see what happens when you make a hybrid of the ZX6R and a Ninja 400 to make this bike. And then we're gonna get on it, go out there, ride this thing, and see what's all the rave about. And then I'm gonna quantify my thoughts and give this motorcycle the Emmy score. Let's start by talking about what's under the hood. On the ZX4RR, you have a 399cc inline 4-cylinder engine that makes a claimed 75 horsepower at the crank and about 30 foot-pounds of torque. I don't believe a single digit in that statement on Kawasaki's website, because dynoed ZX4Rs that I have seen, at the wheel, they have roughly 50 horsepower. I have heard that the ZX4RRs in the US are heavily detuned, and if you do take the slip-on off and put an exhaust, and then you ECU flash the bike and put an air filter, which is essentially another $2,000–$3,000 worth of costs, you can get this bike to 75 to 80 horsepower. But as it stands stock, you have nowhere near 75 horsepower like Kawasaki claims. You do have 50 to 55 horsepower. The other thing is that this engine is the biggest difference between this bike and the Ninja 400. Ninja 400 is a twin cylinder, it's a parallel twin. This one is an inline 4. They behave differently, they make different power figures, they sound different, they have different characteristics. Everything is different about these two engines. And this engine is connected to a 6-speed slipper clutch, which is typical in a lot of Kawasaki motorcycles. And this one has something called a return shift. Reading the Kawasaki manual, I don't really understand how it works, because it explains that before you go to a certain gear, you have to go through the gears next to it. Essentially, it's a sequential gearbox, which of course is the case on every motorcycle. I don't really understand what it means. Maybe it's trying to say that neutral itself is a gear between 1 and 2. So it's not a half gear. You don't have to feather the shift pedal to get to it. You can just do a full tap and it goes from 1 to neutral, and neutral to 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. We'll see it out on our test ride, how it behaves. Maybe I will understand it there. Anyways, coming out of this engine, you have 4 pipes merging into one where the catalytic converter is. And I've noticed on modern bikes, despite emission laws getting stricter and stricter, the catalytic converters are shrinking in size. They're getting much smaller. You can barely notice the existence resistance of a catalytic converter. I bet it doesn't even weigh much either, so you don't really have to take it off. But again, because it's constrained in power, it's probably a given any ZX4RR owner is gonna take this whole system off and put a new exhaust system on to gain those additional 20-25 horsepower. But anyways, take a listen to how the ZX4RR sounds. Now, as for technology, you get a pretty good package here, not to the level of Ducati or MV Agusta, but you definitely get a lot of useful things here. You get the quick shifter, obviously up and down, and that's the difference between this one and the single R. So the ZX4R does not have quick shifter. ZX4RR does have quick shifter, and both directions up and down. You get that here. You have a 4.3-inch TFT screen, which is common on this bike and a lot of other Kawasaki's, the ZX6R, the ZX10R, the Ninja 650. All of those motorcycles have the exact same TFT screen. It's a good one. It's not a downside that it's shared amongst many Kawasaki's. It's a good one, and this bike has it. You also have Kawasaki traction control, or KTRC, 3 levels to pick from, and to pick any of those levels, you first have to be in the rider riding mode, which is the custom one. Once you're in here, you can push the select button on the handlebar, and either the power starts blinking or the KTRC starts blinking. Either of those two that are blinking with the up and down arrow, you can adjust, modify the values on the screen. If you pick KTRC, you can go from off to 1 to 2 and to 3. And if you want to let the bike decide these values itself, you can obviously scroll through those pre-made ride modes, rain, road, race, stuff like that. Another difference between the ZX4R and the RR, other than that quick shifter that I already mentioned, is the existence of a fully adjustable front forks and a rear suspension, which you don't have on a ZX4R. You only get those on ZX4RRs. This bike has it being a RR. It has a fully adjustable front forks and a fully adjustable rear suspension, and the rear suspension is actually shared between this bike and the ZX10R, which is pretty much twice as expensive. So with the quick shifters on this bike, the fully adjustable front forks and the rear suspension, the TFT screen, Kawasaki's traction control, phone connectivity to that screen, you get a pretty healthy technology package. Another nice touch on this Kawasaki is the existence of this helmet lock. It reminds me of motorcycles from the 70s and the 80s. Modern bikes, I don't see this anymore on them. They either don't have it at all, or if they do, it's integrated somehow into the rear seat of the motorcycle. If you like remove it and you look underneath, there are hooks. But that requires you putting the key in this hole here, removing the rear seat, then hooking your helmet to it, putting the seat back, locking it in place. A lot of work. This one is very easy. You just put the key in it, you twist, and this metal bracket opens up. You can put your helmet in there and just close it up again and remove the key. It's a pretty nice touch, and it speaks again to the philosophy of this bike being a great track bike as well as a great commuter. This is going to be very handy for those of you who have to park to go grocery shopping or to go to work, but you don't want to take your helmet with you. You can just utilize this helmet lock. So thanks, Kawasaki, for including this here. And as far as the passenger, the pillion seat, and the rider seat goes, they're both removable, and they do not require any tools to remove. For the passenger seat, obviously, like almost any other Kawasaki, there's a keyhole under the tail. You can just unlock it and remove the seat that way, and when you do remove it, you realize there is just a little bit of storage space under the seat, so you can utilize that to carry your documents around. But there is a little bit more storage space if you need it. By pulling a tab in this corner of the rear seat, you can unlatch the front seat, and when you remove that, you get immediate access without any tools to the battery and all the fuses And when you do close the seat on them, there is a space between the battery and the seat that you can utilize to put something a little larger up here. So you could really commute on this bike. You have a pretty adequate amount of storage on this bike. So again, another plus for the ZX4RR. So now let's talk about pricing, colors, options, trims, variations, all the things you need to know before you go to your dealership and pick one of these up. If you are lucky enough to find one, that is, you have multiple color options. When it comes to the single R, you only have black. So it comes in a color like this, and that's your only option. If you don't like black, you have to get a double R to be able to choose from other colors. So when you do choose double R, ZX4RR like this one, you could have black. You could have the 40th anniversary, because yes, it's been 40 years since that GPZ 900R that I mentioned that was made in '84 to 2024, 40 years. So you get this retro looking ZX7R inspired old school paint scheme for the 40th anniversary on this bike. You could get this black one, or you could get the KRT edition. Those are your color options for the ZX4R. This one is the cheapest, the black one, at $9,800. You can go to $10,100 for the KRT edition, and $200 more at $10,300. You can get the 40th anniversary. So essentially it's a pretty pricey motorcycle for a 400cc bike, but it is also the most exciting 400cc motorcycle. As for the design on this motorcycle, I really like it. I think Kawasaki did a really good job designing this bike, not going over the top like those CF Moto ones that have about the same cc displacement, but they have these large wings like MotoGP motorcycles. They didn't do overkill here. They did a good handsome design, especially in this all black livery, and they have borrowed a couple of design elements from bikes that I consider really pretty, like the previous generation ZX6R from 2012-2013. That ram air mount up front looks just like the older ZX6Rs, as well as these gills on the side. They remind me of the S1000RR BMW, the older version. They had these shark gills on the two sides. It was a staple of design on those motorcycles, and they have brought it here to the ZX4RR, as well as the front rotors. Even though this is a 400cc motorcycle, you would expect one rotor on one side of the wheel. Instead, they have reduced the size of that rotor, but duplicated it. Two rotors on both sides of the front wheel, which is the hallmark of a super sport motorcycle. And you have that here. The Ninja 400 didn't have that. And it looks kind of weird when a motorcycle only has one rotor on the side. That's just hallmark of a weak bike. This one has two rotors, and it looks really, really good. You look around it and you see minimal plastic used. I mean, obviously the fairings are plastic, but they're painted. What I mean is unpainted plastic, minimally used around this motorcycle, making it look really expensive. And I think it is really expensive at around $10,000, but at least it looks really good. And with all of that out of the way, let's take the ZX4RR out on the road and see how it rides. But before we do that, a big shout out to Bellevue Motorsports for allowing me to grab this hot commodity with literally 2 miles on the dash and show it to you guys and potentially put a couple of miles on it. But I'm sure it's not gonna matter to the next owner, because there's only 25 of these on the market right now for sale. So again, thanks to Bellevue Motorsports for allowing us to do this, and let's go and ride this bike. Okay, let's go. Let's see how this rides. Okay, pretty nice, pretty nice. Is quick shifter turned off on this motorcycle? I cannot quick shift for some reason. Huh, weird. My camera almost flew off the bike. It's a very sketchy system. I just placed the pole right there without any tethering or anything, so hopefully it doesn't fall off the motorcycle. I'm not gonna put a lot of miles on this bike because it is a precious motorcycle. It's a a hot commodity, and I don't want the next owner to be like, oh, why did the mod put so many miles on this motorcycle? That's unacceptable. All right. Oh my God, the sound of this motorcycle. I wonder if the Kawasaki quick shifter is turned off on this bike. I don't know what's going on, but I cannot quick shift whatever is going on. All right, let's hold the camera in place. I cannot believe this motorcycle is only 400 cc's. Wow. It sounds so perfect. I wouldn't even change the stock muffler on this thing. It's the most beautiful sounding motorcycle. Can you guys hear that? Wow. This is a quick bike. And it sounds nice. It is expensive. I don't know. Maybe over time, the insurance, the amount of insurance that you pay less compared to like a ZX6R will even this out. So it becomes a $7,000 motorcycle after 5 or 6 years of ownership. But this is a motorcycle you buy to keep, because it's a small displacement bike. It really doesn't have anything on it that makes it a $10,000 bike, except the novelty, except the quality of Kawasaki, all the things that are reasons to keep this bike. You shouldn't buy this to flip it. If you want to do that, if you want to buy something to have it for a very short period of time and to get rid of it soon, just go on Craigslist, buy something for 3-4K, and then sure, get rid of it. Sometimes you can even make money off of those things. This feels very upright. The ergonomics are just like the Ninja 400, but the power delivery is nothing like a 400. It's very rapid. It gets up the RPM very quickly, and it's thanks to, you know, the inline 4-cylinder. So it is a true hybrid of a ZX6R and a Ninja 400. The ergonomics of a city bike, but the performance of a track bike. And it is the bike that nobody can tell you, oh, why did you buy this bike? You're not going to use it to its maximum limits. You're going to actually say, no, screw you. I will use this to its maximum limits because it's a 400cc bike, not an H2. That would be a waste of power to buy. If you are an avid track rider, but you also want to daily ride a motorcycle, this is the best option you're ever going to get.
And now onto the ME score for the 2024 Kawasaki Ninja ZX4RR. In the commuter category, the ZX4RR comes with ABS, LED lighting for better visibility, street-friendly ergonomics, a comfy seat, adequate storage, a segmented fuel gauge, and a large 4 US gallon gas tank, making this a good commuter bike. With a large dealership support and the reliability you come to expect from Kawasaki and a price tag of under $10,000, you have all the more reasons to comfortably daily ride this motorcycle. The ZX4RR earns a 17 out of 20 in the commuter category. Now on to the performance/dope factor category. The ZX4RR looks sporty and has the power delivery to meet the athletic looks. Although you aren't dealing with a lot of horsepower or torque, you won't be disappointed on the track. Sitting at 414 pounds, you don't necessarily have the lightest bike in the 400cc segment, as CF Moto 450SS is only 370 pounds, but it redeems itself by having an inline 4-cylinder engine, which is a pretty rare engine type in its class. As for the design choices and marketplace, the ZX4RR comes in 3 colors in 2024, giving you plenty to choose from. The styling is decent and looks identical to the Ninja 400. Fit and finish is pretty great, and it is expected of Kawasaki. But as desirable as it isn't necessarily a special bike per se. It is the smallest of the ZX line in the US. The ZX4RR gets a 12 out of 20 for the overall performance and dope factor category. And it sits here on the list of other sport bikes I have reviewed. Much to my surprise, this 400cc motorcycle beats out every other super sport bike that I have reviewed, and it makes sense when you think about it. Following the review, I now understand why these bikes are selling like hotcakes. It isn't because this bike beats an H2 in a straight line, or that it's fancier than an MV Agusta F4. It can give you the most fun you will ever have out on the back roads and also on the track. It has a screaming inline 4, but it also gets you 40 miles per gallon. It has a helmet hook, so you can go inside grocery shopping without having your helmet stolen, but it also has a quick shifter up and down for a faster lap time. It is a jack of all trades and master of none, but have you heard the rest of this quote? A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.